Hey there friends, Gerald Stanwick here. If you're new to my channel, welcome. This is the place where we sit down together, sometimes with a cup of coffee, sometimes with a heavy heart, and talk about life, the good parts, the messy parts, and everything in between. Before we dive into today's story, I'd like you to do me a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Trust me, you won't want to miss the lessons we share here. And if you've been part of this community for a while, you already know how personal these stories get. Today, I want to tell you about the smallest lie I've ever told and how it almost cost me the person I thought I'd grow old calling my best friend. Now, you might be thinking, Gerald, how small are we talking? Well, so small that I didn't think twice about it. But as you'll soon see, even the tiniest crack can bring down the strongest bridge. So, let me take you back to where it all began, to a summer afternoon when I was just a 10-year-old kid and the world felt a whole lot simpler. Friendship, real friendship, is one of those things that doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It sneaks up on you. One day, you're strangers. The next, you can't imagine life without them. For me, that started on a sticky July afternoon in 1979. I'd wandered down to Miller's Park, a scrappy little rectangle of grass in the middle of our small town. The kind of place where the grass never seemed quite green enough. The basketball hoops leaned to one side, and the old oak tree in the corner had initials carved so deep they'd probably survive the end of the world. That's where I saw him, Mark Whitaker. He was sitting on the swings, half-heartedly kicking at the dirt with his sneakers. In his hands, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich wrapped in wax paper, one corner bitten off. Now, 10-year-old me didn't have the kind of social grace you see in kids' movies. I didn't stroll up with a clever opening line. I plopped down on the swing next to him because it was the only one left. "What's wrong with you?" I asked. Because, well, kids don't sugarcoat. "Broke my skateboard," he mumbled through a mouthful of bread. That was it. That was our introduction. In the next 30 minutes, we traded war stories about bike crashes, compared the scars on our knees, and argued over whether chocolate milk tasted better in the morning or at night. By the time the streetlights flickered on, we'd made plans to build the greatest ramp ever in his driveway the next day. Over the years, we grew up side by side. Summers were spent building tree houses out of plywood we borrowed from construction sites. Winters meant snowball fights that lasted until our gloves froze stiff. High school brought new challenges, girls, part-time jobs, and the sudden realization that neither of us was destined to be a professional athlete, no matter how many hoops we shot or touchdowns we dreamed about. But through it all, we had this unspoken rule: no lies. We could mess up, screw up, even blow things up, which we once did with a firecracker and a mailbox. But that's another story. But we told each other the truth, always. Looking back now, I realize just how rare that was. And maybe that's why what happened later cut so deep. Because the stronger the trust, the harder the fall. It happened on one of those Thursdays you don't expect to remember. Not a birthday, not a holiday, just a regular evening in late September. One of those nights where summer's warmth has faded, but winter hasn't quite claimed the air. The streets were slick from an all-day drizzle, and the lamplight bounced off the wet pavement in that way that makes you feel both cozy and restless. I was sitting at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm an hour ago. My girlfriend and I had just finished a ridiculous argument, something about whether we should go to her sister's house for Thanksgiving or stay in town. We weren't even mad about the real issue. It was one of those fights where you're just tired, but too stubborn to say so. That's when the phone rang. I saw Mark's name flash across the little green screen of my cordless phone. This was back when smartphones were still a couple of years off for me, and I thought, man, I could really use a night out to clear my head. But the truth, I didn't have the energy. I didn't want to talk about anything, not even the weather. I just wanted to be left alone to wallow in my own sour mood. I picked up anyway. "Hey, Jerry." Mark's voice was light, casual. "Couple of us are meeting at O'Malley's tonight. You in?" Now, here's the thing. If I'd been honest, I'd have said, "Mark, I'm just not up for it tonight, buddy." He would have understood. That's the kind of guy he was. But somewhere between my brain and my mouth, the truth got edited. "Can't, man," I said, rubbing my forehead like I was already exhausted. "Gotta work late." That was it. 6 small words. The kind of throwaway excuse we've all used before. But here's the kicker. An hour later, I was at Greenfield's Market, buying chips, ice cream, and a 6-pack of root beer, preparing for what I like to call a solo pity party. And that's where I ran into Dave. Dave was one of those guys who always seemed to know everything that was going on with everyone. Nice enough, but chatty. And chatty people have a way of carrying news whether they mean to or not. "Hey, Gerald, skipping out on the gang tonight?" he asked, eyeing the snacks in my basket. "Nah, just grabbing something on the way home from work," I said, without missing a beat. It didn't hit me until the next day. The next afternoon, Mark called. His tone was friendly, but there was an undercurrent there, something I couldn't quite name at the time. "So, how was work last night?" he asked. "Long," I replied, forcing a chuckle. "Boring." He said. There was a pause. "Funny, Dave said he saw you at Greenfield's." Now, I could have stopped right there. Could have said, "You got me. I just didn't feel like coming out." We could have laughed about it, maybe even poked fun at my lousy excuse-making skills, but I didn't. Instead, I doubled down. "Yeah, I just swung by after work." It felt harmless in the moment, a pebble tossed into a lake. But even the smallest pebble makes ripples, and those ripples were already moving towards shore. If you've ever lied to someone who knows you inside out, you know the hardest part isn't keeping your story straight. It's pretending you can't see the change in their eyes. The first sign was subtle. Mark's calls got shorter. He'd still ask how I was, still invite me to things, but it felt transactional, like we were going through the motions of friendship without really being in it. Then came the missed invitations. I'd hear from other people, "Oh, we all went to the lake last weekend. Didn't Mark tell you?" And I'd just smile and pretend I was fine. One night, a few weeks after the lie, we were sitting at O'Malley's watching a game. I made a crack about how he always exaggerated his fishing stories, expecting the usual laugh. Instead, he looked at me over the rim of his beer and said, "Guess we all stretch the truth sometimes, huh?" It was a joke, technically, but it landed like a gut punch. See, the trouble with a small lie is that it's never just about the thing you lied about. It plants this tiny seed of doubt in the other person's mind. If he'll lie about that, what else will he lie about? And even though neither of us said it out loud, I could feel that seed growing. 2 months later, Mark called and asked to meet for lunch at Mel's Diner. Mel's was our spot. Red vinyl booths, endless coffee, pancakes the size of hubcaps. If you wanted to have a real conversation in our town, you went to Mel's. When I walked in, he was already there, arms crossed on the table, coffee untouched. No smile, no "hey man," just "we need to talk." I slid into the booth, my stomach sinking. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he just laid it out, slow and steady, like he'd been rehearsing it. "I don't get it, Gerald. We've been friends for decades. Why lie to me about something so small? You could have just said you didn't feel like coming out. I'd have respected that." I tried to explain. "It wasn't about you, Mark. I just didn't want to be a downer. Thought it was better to make an excuse than dump my bad mood on you." He shook his head. "Trust is trust. If I can't believe the small things, how can I believe the big ones? That hit harder than I expected, because he was right. We finished lunch in silence. He left a 20 on the table, said see you around, and walked out. And just like that, my longest friendship was on life support. After that day at Mel's Diner, the silence between us didn't just grow, it solidified. You know how in winter, a light frost can turn into solid ice overnight if the temperature drops just enough? That's what happened to our friendship. One day it was a little cool, the next it was frozen. At first, I thought maybe he just needed a few days to cool off, but days turned into a week into two, and by the third week, I realized we'd slipped out of each other's daily orbit. It was the little things I noticed first. I'd get home from work, glance at my phone, and instead of seeing his name pop up with a meme or a sarcastic, "You alive?" there was nothing, just silence. Our group of mutual friends noticed too. One Saturday, I ran into Sheila, a friend from way back who used to join our fishing trips, and she said, "So, you and Mark okay?" She said it in that tentative way people do when they already know the answer. I brushed it off with a laugh. "Yeah, just busy." But inside, I was chewing on guilt, like it was gristle I couldn't swallow. Evenings became heavier. I'd sit in my living room with the TV on, not really watching, nursing a beer, while my mind replayed every stupid moment that had led us here. I kept going back to that rainy Thursday night, my phone in my hand, the way I could have told the truth and didn't. It's strange how our minds work when we're trying to justify something. I told myself it was just one harmless lie. But if it was so harmless, why was I sitting alone instead of sitting next to my best friend at O'Malley's, arguing over whether the ref had made the right call? The worst part was the dreams. Some nights, I'd dream we were kids again, riding our bikes down Miller Street, trying to beat the streetlights home. I'd wake up with this hollow feeling in my chest, like I'd lost not just a friend, but a piece of my history. And maybe that's the thing about losing a long friendship. It's not just about the present. It's about the decades of shared language, shared secrets, and shared self that suddenly have nowhere to land. The twist came in the most ordinary way, through a chance encounter. It was late November, the kind of cold where you can see your breath even in the afternoon. I ducked into Greenfield's Market to pick up a few things, and that's where I ran into Dave. If you remember, Dave was the guy who'd spotted me on lie night and unknowingly delivered the first crack in the dam to Mark. We did the usual small talk, and then he tilted his head. "You and Mark still not talking?" I shook my head. "Nah, I think that ship sailed." Dave hesitated, glancing around like we were about to exchange classified intel. Then he leaned in. "You know, Mark's been dealing with his own stuff. Maybe you should hear his side." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Turns out, a few weeks before my little lie, Mark had been offered a job in another city. A big opportunity, but he didn't tell me. Said he didn't want to bring it up until he was sure. The night at O'Malley's, that was supposed to be the night he told me. But when he found out I'd lied, he took it as a sign. Thought maybe I didn't care as much anymore, that I was already pulling away. So why should he open up about something that could change both our lives? Standing there in the middle of Greenfields, holding a loaf of bread and a jar of pickles, I felt like someone had taken the air out of my lungs. Here I was, thinking I was the one betrayed, that my mistake was the sole reason for the rift. And it turned out we'd both been holding back from each other. The moment I got home, I knew I couldn't let another day pass. I called him, straight to voicemail. I texted, "We need to talk. My place. Tonight. Please." I didn't know if he'd come, but around 7:30, I heard a knock. When I opened the door, he looked different. Not in the sense that he'd changed physically, but in the way someone looks when they've been carrying a heavy load for a long time. We sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where we'd shared countless beers, birthday toasts, and half-baked business ideas over the years. I started talking. No excuses, no sugarcoating. I told him exactly why I'd lied, how I'd thought I was sparing him from my bad mood, and how stupid I felt now. Then I told him what Dave had told me. Mark leaned back, rubbed the back of his neck, and said, "Yeah, I should have told you about the job. I just didn't want to jinx it." We sat in silence for what felt like a full minute. Then he said, "Guess we both broke the rule." "What rule?" I asked. "No lies," he said, with a faint smile. It wasn't forgiveness right there and then, but it was the crack in the ice that let the water flow again. Here's what I've learned. In friendship, there's no such thing as a small lie. Not because the facts of the lie are massive, but because the foundation of trust is delicate. When you chip at it, even with something tiny, the damage can run deep. We tell ourselves little lies are harmless, that they're white lies, kindness in disguise. But the truth is, people who love you, really love you, would rather have your raw honesty than your polished half-truth. And here's the other thing. Assumptions can be just as deadly as lies. I assumed telling the truth would burden him. He assumed my lie meant I didn't care anymore. Both of us were wrong, but neither of us gave the other the chance to find out. If there's one thing I tell anyone listening right now, it's this. Say the thing. Say, "I'm not in the mood." Say, "I'm scared." Say, "I don't know yet," because the people who matter will meet you where you are, but only if you let them. So that's it. The story of the small lie that nearly ended my longest friendship, and the lesson that saved it. Mark and I still have our ups and downs, but now we guard that rule fiercely. No lies. Not the small ones, not the big ones, not the in-between ones. I'm telling you this because maybe you've got someone you're not talking to right now. Maybe you're carrying your own small lie. Maybe you think it's too late to fix things. It might not be. Pick up the phone, knock on their door, say the thing, and now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever almost lost a friend over something small that got way bigger than it should have? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. If you're still here, thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because next week I've got a story about a family heirloom, a yard sale, and the day I learned you can't put a price on memories. Until then, this is Gerald Stanwick, signing off. Take care of yourselves and each other.